So he says, go to the whole world, go to all the world and teach them about me. And what they immediately did was pile up on top of each other in Jerusalem and sit there. And you're like, what are you guys doing? You had a clear command, go to all the world.
I didn't grow up in the church, and so I'm just like a skeptic at heart. But as I was reading the New Testament when I first became a Christian, and then just in my walk, it's like it was always this thing about Paul where I was like, why? It almost felt like, wait, was he like a backup plan because the disciples weren't going to get things out, or they wouldn't do it the way they were supposed to, or what's the deal, and because he seems like, you have the 12 and then you have Paul's persecuting the early church, and then he just has his conversion experience and then starts going around and planting churches. But the thing about it, and I'd mentioned this to you, is like, as I was processing that, it kind of hit me like he really fits this model of what you see God doing throughout the Old Testament too, where you're taking unlikely people. He's picking unlikely people to do his work, or to get the kingdom moved forward. And we've touched on a lot of those in other episodes of people that are
Absolutely.
just extremely
from David
unlikely.
To Jesus to Ruth.
Yeah, exactly. And it actually totally fits in the template of how God works. He does have all this knowledge, and then God basically flips it upside down and says, yeah, I'm going to use all of that to do what I want to accomplish.
Yeah, so I think he is unlikely yet perfect, if that makes any sense.
Yep.
Because the other 12, they're all Galilean. They're all sort of cut from the same cloth. And you have this, remarkable moment where, after Jesus is resurrected, where they go up on a mountain somewhere in the Galilee. Some of my good friends think it's Mount Arbel. We don't really know. For the Great Commission, where he says, go to all the world and make disciples of all men, baptizing them, and teaching them everything I've taught. So he says, go to the whole world, go to all the world and teach them about me. And what they immediately did was pile up on top of each other in Jerusalem and sit there. And you're like, what are you guys doing? You had a clear command, go to all the world. But they were all Jews who had lived their whole life in primarily Jewish context. You have this whole event where Peter goes to Cornelius' house. Like, they didn't even go to any Greeks or Romans. They only went to people that were like Jewish or half Jewish. Samaritans are like half Jews. So people that were kind of like in the family, we'll go talk to them. But Greeks and Romans are gross. We hate them. They persecute us. And they got false gods. They eat gross things, and their sexual practices are dirty and perverted and ugh. And God has to go like snatch Peter up basically and say, go there, go where I'm, don't call something unclean that I've called clean. And you have this whole sort of drama that plays out. And Peter's like, okay, I'll go. And he goes to Cornelius' house and gets there. And if you read it, it is the most horribly poor example of a cross-cultural sermon you could imagine. Like, if you just imagine a white preacher doing this, at a minority home, like, it's so like almost, because Peter opens by saying, I don't normally go into homes of people like you, but God told me to come here, so I guess you're not dirty. That's basically what he says. And Cornelius is a very graceful man, because he's like, thanks for coming. He doesn't like get offended by Peter being like so like unbelievably unloving, unsensitive, in a lot of ways. He's like, but God told me to come, so I'll share the gospel. And when they all come to faith and are filled with the Holy Spirit, it's like Peter is shocked. Like, oh, who knew? And then he goes back to Jerusalem and reports, and all the other apostles are like, what? Where did you go? Ugh, a Roman? And he's like, yeah, but they like came to faith and got filled with the Holy Spirit. So what am I supposed to do? And then they're all like, oh, now we see God's really not a respecter of persons. So they just weren't, I don't think, equipped. They didn't understand. They'd been told go to the whole world, but they were so entrenched in their worldview stuff that they thought that meant the whole Jewish world, you know? And primarily, they all come to Jerusalem, so let's just hang out here. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, click like and subscribe. It really helps us. And if you really enjoyed it, go on over to our website, thelandofthebible.com, and become a supporter. It helps us generate more content and gives you access to our full library of video and Bible study content.